Hello and welcome to South Asia Today, a show that provides you the glimpses of South Asia. I'm your host Karim Zimik. Here are the headlines. Indian Prime Minister Modi surveys of cyclone-affected areas in Western India. Clan symbols come on in Japan reflects history, culture. Nepal asks for oxygen cylinders from mountainers amid COVID-19 surge. Let's begin the show. India has launched massive rescue and rehabilitation operation after its western states hit by tropical cyclone Tauktae, a storm with wind speeds equivalent to a high-end Category 3 hurricane that formed in the Arabian Sea. The storm damaged infrastructure and agriculture along with western coast. A report.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi took an aerial survey of cyclone Tauktae affected areas of Gujarat, the western state severely hit by the devastating storm. He announced financial assistance of $136 million for immediate relief activities. Prime Minister Modi also chaired a meeting to review the relief and rehabilitation measures being undertaken in the cyclone-hit areas. Cyclone Tauktae hit the western parts of India on May 17 with maximum sustained winds of 205 kilometers per hour. Photos and videos show highways turned into rivers by the heavy rain and trees and power lines toppled by ferocious winds. India's National Disaster Response Force, that is NDRF, deployed more than 100 teams across 6 coastal states to help efforts on the ground. Authorities moved people living in the low-lying and coastal areas to safer places as the cyclone affected the coastal states of Gujarat, Kerala, Karnataka, Goa and Maharashtra.
यहाँ पर तोकते साइक्लोन की तरह से हवामान विभाग की तरफ से हमको आगाही मिली तो हमने तुरंत मेरे पास 2 गांव है वंजल और माछीवाड़ वंजल दोनों गांवों को मिलाकर 110 लोगों को कच्चे मकान घर से पक्के घर में ट्रांसफर सुरक्षित किया गया है.
The storm also smashed into the Bombay High oil field near Mumbai city, where India's biggest offshore oil rigs are located, and sank the barge that had 261 personnel on board. Indian Navy carried out rescue operations off Mumbai coast and brought back 185 people off the barge P305. The barge was engaged in contract work awarded by Oil and Natural Gas Corporation, India's top exploration company. The rescue operations are still underway with Indian Navy's ships and aircraft scouring waters off the financial capital Mumbai for many other workers missing from a barge that sank after a powerful cyclone.
मेरी संख्या के अनुसार पापा 305 के 185 लोग रेस्क्यूड हो चुके हैं अभी की अगर हम फिलहाल बात करें और 2 और जो हैं एक वरप्रथा दूसरी है. आपको यह भी ये जो आपको जान करके खुशी होगी कि हमारे शिप्स ने हमारे कमांड ने हम लोगों ने मिलकर के ऐसा कोऑर्डिनेट किया एंड वी हैव बीन एबल टू अवर्ट अनदर अबाउट 300 मोर lives at sea. That means there were 2 other vessels which were under distress and they were about to abandon the ship, and we could give them assurances that you please do not abandon the ship and we are here to support you. We were there in the vicinity और इस माध्यम से हम लोग जान हम बचा सके.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद वो लोग को. उन लोग के लिए तो आज हम जिंदा है, नहीं तो कोई नहीं बचता.
आपके बाकी साथियों की स्थिति के बारे में बता पाएंगे कुछ जो अभी
वो हमारा जैसा ही स्थिति है सबका.
The influence of Cyclone Tauktae was also witnessed in neighboring Pakistan. A powerful dust storm followed by rain hit parts of its Karachi city. At least 3 people were reportedly killed in roof collapse incidents when strong winds triggered by the dust storm slammed into the city. Residents, however, welcomed the change in weather conditions after a severe heat spell that had gripped the city for 2 days.
2 दिन गर्मी के बाद अल्लाह ताला ने अपनी रहमत बरसाई है और मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि अल्लाह ताला बाद ऐसा ही मौसम रखे, क्योंकि शदीद गर्मी हम कराची वाले बिल्कुल बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकते, हीट स्ट्रोक वगैरह.
और 2 दिन पहले जो गर्मी पड़ी है जिसकी वजह से आवाम बहुत परेशान रही है। और ये देखें बारिश का समय है बिल्कुल और बहुत मज़ा आ रहा है और ऐसे ही मौसम चलता रहे।
The monsoon season in the region has gotten more intense over the years as climate change has made weather more extreme and unpredictable.
Let's move to Nepal. The Himalayan nation, which is under the grip of intense coronavirus pandemic, after confirming 2 variants of coronavirus, a new variant has been detected in the country, which is found to be deadly. Since Nepal is so short of oxygen canisters, it has asked climbers on Mount Everest to bring back there instead of abandoning them on mountain slopes. A report.
The hospitals in capital Kathmandu are packed, so packed that in many cases, 2 patients share one bed, as a second COVID-19 wave overwhelms the country's health infrastructure. Health experts and frontline medical workers have described the situation as near apocalyptic, as they face shortages of hospital beds and oxygen. The rising number of cases in the country has set alarm bells ringing. The shortage of beds is a common problem across Nepal, which has approximately 18,900 generals, 1,450 ICU and 630 ventilator beds across the country. The Nepal Mountaineering Association has asked climbers on Mount Everest to bring back their empty tanks to be refilled for medical usage instead of abandoning them on mountain slopes.
Expedition ma jun sabai climbers-हरु base camp तिर चाहिँ छ उहाँहरुसँग पनि निष्क्रिय चाहिँ सिलिन्डरहरु भएकोले हामीले प्रत्येक ओनरहरु र अपरेटरहरुलाई पनि हामीले कुरा गरिसकेको छ। यो चाहिँ एक्सपिडिसन प्रसाद यो चीजलाई चाहिँ प्रयोगमा आयो भने तपाई हामीले सहयोग गरौं।
The country issued climbing permits to more than 700 climbers for 16 Himalayan peaks, 408 to Mount Everest for the April-May climbing season in a bid to get mountaineering industry and tourism back up and running. Oxygen tanks often get buried in avalanches or are abandoned on the mountain slopes at the end of the expedition.
Our government and city and our public, they have a lot of coronavirus sickness, so they have a problem for oxygen or heart that. We have around 7 summit treks have around 1,000 bottles. So we can when the empty cylinder is come here, we can provide this cylinder to our government, and government will be make a refill for medical oxygen.
Nepal, a poor country of 30 million, has vaccinated barely 2 million people, mainly frontline workers, since it started inoculation on January 27. So far, the country has procured more than 3 million vaccines, including 8 lakh doses from China and 348,000 doses from the WHO-led COVAX facility. India also donated about 1 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine to Nepal and has promised to supply vaccines into the Himalayan nation in near future.
Now we take a look at some happenings in Asia in our segment called Asia Watch. Singapore has authorized the use of Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for those aged 12 to 15 years old in a bid to extend protection to more groups as the country tackles a recent increase of infections. The Health Ministry said data show the vaccine for younger people demonstrated high efficacy consistent with that observed in the adult population, adding its safety profile was also consistent with that of the adult population. Close to 2 million of Singapore's 5.7 million people have received at least one dose. About 1.4 million recipients have completed the full 2-dose regimen. The move comes as the country tackles a recent increase in infections after months with relatively few community cases. The city-state has been using the Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna vaccines and have taken delivery of 200,000 doses of China's Sinovac vaccine, which has yet to be granted emergency use authorization. North Korea's 13-year-old student Im In-jong developed a disinfection robot that can roll around school and spray disinfectant. In the video provided by North Korea's official news agency KCNA, a square box robot was seen moving around the school hallway and spraying disinfectant with 5 holes on nozzles on the device. The footage showed the robot saying disinfection completed after students receive automated hand sanitizer dispenser from the machine. KCNA said EAM has read science magazines for 2 years and used electron circuit simulation program to make the robot, which can also avoid obstacles. North Korea claims to have 0 confirmed cases of the coronavirus, but has imposed strict border lockdowns and movements restrictions that crippled trade and exacerbated economic problems. Thailand has begun vaccinating 500 monks in Bangkok as the country continues to grapple with the 3rd wave of coronavirus infections. The vaccination drive began on May 18 with monks in the capital receiving China's Sinovac vaccine at a local hospital. There are about 200,000 monks in Thailand. The Southeast Asian country's latest COVID-19 outbreak has seen infections more than triple and deaths increase 6-fold since it started in April, following a year of success in containing earlier outbreaks. Bangkok has now recorded 28,658 new infections since the outbreak emerged in April. Moving on to Japan, where people are trying to preserve their rich culture and heritage by practicing art, craft and many more. At one side, kamons, a Japanese symbol that represents Japan's rich history and culture, can still be spotted in an old district in Tokyo. On the other side, a Japanese craftsman is an indigenous traditional sword, katana, reports.
The term kamon refers to a crest used in Japan for centuries to indicate one's origins. They take inspiration from a plant or geometric shape. In the samurai era, kamon was used to distinguish between friends and enemies during battle. It gradually became a cultural component that preserves the history of Japanese families and expresses their ancient roots. The samurai armor and their fearsome helmet invoked fear in the heart of their enemy, but they also concealed their face, so it made easier for them to distinguish between friend and enemy during the battle. Thus, since the 10th century in Japan, the use of family crest that distinguishes the prince and samurai family, known in Japanese as kamon, emblem on the helmet, shield, sword and even personal items was used. It was also painted during battles on the war flag known as hata. During the Edo period, the use of kamon spread among the commoners as well. In Japan, about 50,000 of these kamons can still be spotted in an old district in Tokyo. However, they no longer refer to a family of a prince or a warrior, but rather to the owner of a restaurant or shop.
現在の日本での家紋の使われ方っていうのは、冠婚葬祭って呼ばれる、いわゆる、その行事事ですよねの時ぐらいでしか見られないっていうことが多いです。特に結婚式であったりとか、あとお葬式の時には家紋をつけるっていうのがやっぱあるんですけれども、ただそれもその文化そのものがどんどんやっぱ伝えてきてるっていうか、だからそれまで日本が築き上げてきたその家紋を使うっていう文化っていうそのものは徐々に減ってきてます。
Kamon design is usually inspired by geometric shape or a plant that is known to rapidly grow and spread, indicating the power and strength of the family and optimism for their expansion and survival for long generations. Many families are keen to weave kamon on traditional clothes worn on important occasions.
自分はどこそこの誰ですよというどういう一族ですよということを表すためのものなんですね。私たちは門が好きで家紋の研究もしてそれを次の世代に伝えようとそういう活動をしてますから、やっぱり若い人とかにつけてほしいと思ってますよ。
Kamon is a symbol that represents the deep roots of the Japanese family and tells part of its history. That is why many Japanese people consider it an important component of their culture and are keen to continue using it. Next we show you this Japanese sword called katana. It is a traditional sword with an elaborate blade, and ornament or detail. Most of its parts are handmade. This sword is weapon which was used in samurai war years ago. These craftsmen have been making katana for the last 22 years after getting trained from a sword craft master. The blade of the sword extends to the stage and the hot iron is hammered. It takes almost 3 months to make one of these swords.
日本独特の技術によって作られて、それでその武器でありながらその美術的価値が認められているっていうのは世界で唯一の武器だと思います。そういった形でものすごく希少性があるっていうことが一つだと思います。その日本の鉄というのはものすごく高いんですよね。その完成品としてできたものというものは、ものによってですけれども美術性の高いもの、評価されたものというものは国宝級でやはり億という値段がつきます。おそらく世界どこ見てもそれだけの値段つく武器はないと思います。
This shop in Tokyo sells Japanese sword. These craftsmen have permission from the government to make traditional Japanese swords.
海外になる方は今はもうコロナなので日本人なんですけども、前はコロナが始まる前は外国の方が結構来て買っていただいてました。最近流行りでもって日本国内でも若い人の層にいろいろ広がりを見せているんですけども、それっていうのはゲームの刀剣乱舞だとか鬼滅の刃、最近流行っている映画なんですけども、そういった影響が大きくてですね、若い方にも買っていただく。
The Japanese sword is made by highly skilled craftsmen, which is being reflected through its high artistic value. The spirit of traditional Japanese manufacturing is admired by the world.
A large number of political activists from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir who are living abroad are being named as traitors by Islamabad. The activists have been demanding Pakistan to vacate the occupied territory. Today we meet a political activist and writer from POK who has been facing strong criticism and threats from Pakistan and its agencies.
A protest outside the United Nations office in Geneva by political activists from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is a regular phenomenon during the regular sessions of Human Rights Council. They have been raising their voice against Islamabad's brutality and oppression in POK and Gilgit-Baltistan for over 70 years. In return, these political leaders and activists are being called as traitors by Pakistan for raising their concerns at international forums. Some of these activists are even threatened and not allowed to travel to their ancestral homes.
पाकिस्तान का इस खिते पर कब्जा है और इस खिते पर पाकिस्तान का मुकम्मल कंट्रोल है। इसकी कोई शुबा ज़िंदगी का ऐसा नहीं जिस पर पाकिस्तान का कंट्रोल नहीं है। इवन जो नेशनलिज्म है वो भी पाकिस्तानी ब्रांड नेशनलिज्म है बहुत से लोगों की। मैं सबका नहीं कहूँगा, बहुत से लोगों की, बहुत सी जमातों की पाकिस्तानी ब्रांड ऑफ नेशनलिज्म है। बल्कि उसमें मैं थोड़ा सा इजाफा ये करूँगा कि ये पाकिस्तानी ब्रांड नेशनलिज्म नहीं कहूँगा कि ये मुस्लिम नेशनलिज्म है। इट इज़ नॉट जम्मू कश्मीर की नेशनलिज्म। ये स्टेट नेशनलिज्म या कश्मीरी नेशनलिज्म अगर कहा जाए तो ये उस तरह की नेशनलिज्म नहीं है। और आमतौर पर ये होता है कि जब काबुज मुल्क होते हैं वो जो यहाँ पर जो तहरीक चल रही होती है तो वो उन तहरीक के तंजीमों के अंदर अपने सेल कायम कर लेते हैं या कुछ तंजीमें खुद वो सेटअप करते हैं, उनको सपोर्ट करते हैं, स्पॉन्सर करते हैं, उनको प्लेटफॉर्म मुहैया करते हैं और ताकि वो उनके मफदात का तहफ़्फ़ुज़ भी कर सकें और जो ट्रू नेशनलिस्ट हैं उन पर नज़र भी रख सकें।
Dr. Shabir Chaudhry, who hails from Mirpur in POK, has been living in London since 1966. He continues his struggle against occupation, terrorism and religious intolerance in Pakistan, occupied Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. Dr. Shabir has been accused by Pakistan's spy agency, the ISI, as an Indian agent who has been trying to sabotage the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor project as well as other activities against Pakistan. Islamabad even threatened and harassed Dr. Shabir.
वो क्या चाहते हैं कि जो नेशनलिस्ट लोग हैं वो एजेंट हैं किसके, कभी कहते हैं अमेरिका के लिए काम कर रहे हैं, कभी कहते हैं कि इंडिया के लिए काम कर रहे हैं, कभी किसी दूसरे मुल्क का इल्जाम आ जाता है। तो उनका मतलब ये है कि जो मुहिब वतन लोग सिर्फ वही हैं जो अपने आप को किबला काबा मानते हैं इस्लामाबाद। वो कहते हैं कि पाकिस्तान के साथ हमने ला करना, सिर्फ वही मुहिब वतन है जो अपने आग की खुदरातियत इस्तेमाल करना चाहते हैं कि हमें अपने मुस्तकबिल का फैसला खुद करना है। और ये ज़रूरी नहीं है हमारे लिए कि हम पाकिस्तान का साथ दें और पाकिस्तान का हिस्सा बनें। देखिए, आग की खुदरातियत की मर्ज़ी भी ये मतलब यही होता है कि कौमों का अपनी मर्ज़ी से इंतखाब करना, अपने फ्यूचर का मुस्तकबिल का फैसला करना।
The people in Pakistan occupied Kashmir have been demanding freedom from Pakistani occupation as they are being treated as slaves by Islamabad. Even though POK has a president, prime minister and a council, the governing structure is powerless and dependent on the Pakistani establishment for the smallest issues.
It's time for me to wrap up today's episode. We will be back next week at the same time. This is Karim signing off on behalf of entire production team of South Asia Today. Goodbye and take care.